partnership between Ford Motor Company and the Henry Ford Museum. They were chartered through the Wayne County Regional Educational Services, and they are located directly on our campus. Ninth graders, it's a 9 through 12 school, and the ninth graders do all of their schooling in the museum, and occasionally some outside classes like gym, actually in the office area of the Henry Ford that is not accessible to regular guests. And the 11th or 10th through 12th graders are in the village in a large white building by the baseball field and the pond. You've probably seen it if you've walked around our campus. So there are students everywhere. They utilize our campus amenities. They use our dining room for the ninth graders. They use their our collections in their curriculum. So there's a lot of codependency there. And like I said, there have been many different iterations of how we have interacted together. So right now we are on the most current one, and I can't even number it for you, but it has given us a few new growing pains, if you will. We usually exist in pretty good harmony. On the surface, we look great. Occasionally we'll be annoyed when ninth graders are really loud in our office space, but there's a general pretty good relationship between HFA staff and the Henry Ford, and particularly the Benson Ford Research Center staff. But we do have very different work environments, and we are governed by different boards with different institutional priorities and missions. So we do run into some issues. And that's common with a lot of different groups. This is kind of our pilot of trying to run stuff with K-12 schools. We haven't really done this before outside of our education department, which deals mostly with stuff on our floor, stuff in the village, not really the archival stacks, not really the library. We're not a field trip destination. So this is really unique to us, and we handle it more than our education department does. So the things we have learned between navigating Benson Ford Research Center staff and HFA staff seem to be that the HFA staff definitely have some expectations of us when they're working with us that we might not be able to help with. There's a lot of requests and big asks for material that they assume we know about off the top of our head. They expect us, and maybe it's something easy, maybe it's something about Henry Ford and we can answer really fast, and we have people that are experts on staff. But we also have a lot of requests for very small things, or things that require us to do our own research to help out. And there's very rarely time given to answer those types of questions. Our staff is also learning to instruct and accommodate a new skill level of researcher with high school students, and I'll get into that more in another slide. We're also dealing with red tape surrounding access to our collections. We do have some restricted collections. There aren't a ton. We deal with now things that are appropriate for the maturity level of the students, which we wouldn't really consider before with other researchers, but given that we're not an official field trip for these students, and it's kind of an extension of their HFA experience, we are kind of learning what is appropriate to show students, what they can process and understand. And that's all on top of our stacks are closed. There's not access to our storage facility without pre-approval or special access people involved. There are some things we just don't pull out, period. And people know we have them, so they'll still ask for it. And we're more likely to show that to an HFA class than maybe to a general tour request off the street. But we are still trying to work out, okay, where do we draw the line? This isn't a fully internal request that we can say, okay, we'll throw everything to the wind, but it's not fully external either. It's a very weird relationship to be having, and we're still navigating what that means for us. In accordance with the HFA staff expectations, we also are running into a lot of scheduling expectations, which with HFA staff, we run on what we like to call museum time. We have projects that are 5-10 years down the road that we are trucking away at. We were supposed to open a racing exhibit called Driven to Win this year that has been in the works for over 10 years. So we're used to working slow and steady, having a lot of time to do research, having goals and meeting deadlines, but not turning around things on a teacher's schedule. And HFA seems to run particularly almost day to day. I know they do have lesson plans, and that's something that they are not necessarily apt to share with us. But they will also email me maybe on a Friday and say, hey, I need my students to come in on Monday. And that doesn't give us a ton of time to plan things, and they might not have a lot of wiggle room in terms of what their schedule looks like either. So we have tried to institute a 2-week schedule or 2-week out scheduling. It doesn't work very well. We're really trying to keep this relationship going. So when in the before times of the pandemic, we would get requests for, hey, can you see us in a day, in 2 days? We would bend over backwards to see these students and help out. But we're going to start to try to institute a Google form this year, making sure everyone was putting their requests in writing in a place where I was not the only one that saw them, so they could be shared with our special access person, whoever was going to be in the reading room that day monitoring our patrons, things like that. So it didn't have to be a chain of emails to get everyone involved. And in that, they would also have to share their lesson plans, any assignments, and learning expectations. A lot of these requests come in and say, hey, I want to see something on suffrage. And we go, okay, can you be a little more specific? Or, hey, I need to look at agriculture in relation to the village. And we're like, okay, we have 2 farms and historic farming and all of this information. We need to narrow it down. And oftentimes those emails go unanswered. So we'd pull things, and it would become clear once we saw the students' assignments, which we wouldn't see until they came in with a piece of paper, that the things we pulled aren't going to help them. And that's because there wasn't great communication. So we were going to start to try to put our foot down this year and see how things worked out. That's clearly now a plan for the 21-22 school year, as HFA is still all virtual and we are not open to the public. I mentioned before that we had to learn instruction at a new level for patrons. Our normal patron base consists of graduate students, professional researchers, companies doing further research for products, and a lot of car fanatics. Of that group, the car fanatics are the least refined in terms of what they know, what they're doing, and how to handle archival documents and things like that. But they're also probably some of the most driven people you will ever meet. So while you might have to handhold them for a few minutes to say, here's how you touch this, here's how you handle a folder, here's how you request items for digitization, you don't have to direct their research. They've come to you with a million questions, and you can send them away with boxes once they know how to handle everything. Since prior to 2017, our relationship with the Henry Ford Academy was a bit strained. We did not provide them with any instruction for several years. In 2017, there was a request from higher up that we give our teachers a tour and bring them kind of back into the loop and tell them they could ask us for stuff. And several teachers did. And at that point, we had to learn how to deal with high schoolers. And then we had to learn that 9th graders are definitely different than 12th graders, which is all very intuitive as I'm saying it out loud. And I'm sure you're realizing, of course, the 14-year-olds are very different than the 18-year-olds. But when we've been exclusively dealing with very enthusiastic patrons and people that are working on graduate projects and documentaries and things like that, it was a bit of a culture shock to have people come in and that didn't necessarily want to be there. Maybe they were really happy to be outside of their classroom, but they were not ready to look at primary sources. They didn't know what they were looking at. They had no information literacy training. They don't know how to start research. They just didn't know any of these basic things. They don't have a media center. They don't have a librarian or a media specialist on staff. So we started to take over some of those roles. We would give information literacy classes. We would sit in on some of their research classes for their seniors. And their English teachers were doing great jobs. Their history teachers were doing great jobs. But it was beneficial for the students to have us there as well, to say, hey, here's what it looks like when you get to a different level of education. Here's what'll be expected of you. And they tended to actually respect us a little more, probably because they didn't see us a ton, and not every student was super interested in what we were saying, but we got through to quite a few students and kind of showed them, hey, you don't have to just rely on Wikipedia for your paper. Here's what primary sources can look like and things like that. So that's been very rewarding, but it has been a bit of a learning curve for us. I know that I am not a good children's librarian, and I'm not a really good teen librarian in a traditional public setting. So I'm much more comfortable interacting with adults and talking with these students. And one of the things we found is kind of beneficial with that is to remind them that while they interact with us on their school day, that we are not Henry Ford Academy staff, and that we are not going to take a lot of their shenanigans when it comes to Henry Ford Academy stuff, and that while we want to help them, our job is not to teach them. So it's very rare that it comes out that bluntly, but we like to remind them that we're here to help all researchers. And if they're no longer interested in doing this, if they're just here for the class project and they're willing to fail, like, we're not going to chase after them. And that's really kind of given some of these students, okay, so maybe this is a more real world experience. But we've also then tried to plan more fun activities and things like that to try to keep them more engaged. Our programming is mostly the same as our special access programming. We do stacks tours of both our 2D material and our 3D storage, as well as sitting students down in our reading room. Our 2D material is very, very widely distributed. A lot of it has been digitized. We try to start everyone out with a general stacks tour, kind of show them all of the things we have, from a letter from Clyde Burrow, who a lot of the students have at least heard of. They know who Bonnie and Clyde are, to Henry Ford's driver's license, stuff for the Wright brothers, Thomas Edison, the big names, our flagship kind of names for the Henry Ford, and just show them things that aren't on the floor that are also really cool. We try to connect a lot of what they see on their 2D tour with the things in our 3D storage. So we might have a design of a Dior dress out with a letter from Elizabeth Parks Firestone talking about the color and the dress and the design. And then we'll have the dress out for them to look at. So we can show them how these resources that they're looking at right now relate to real objects in the world, and why people would use us for research, and the things you can learn by going through our archival collection. Universally, they love the 3D tour more. I love the 3D tour more. It's really hard to get people super enthusiastic about looking over manuscripts and letters and things like that. But occasionally a name will be really interesting to them, or they'll find something cool. We'll pull out scrapbooks and photographs and stuff like that. The thing we have noticed is that the class sizes are always too big for everyone to be on a tour at once. So about half of the classes get stuck back, usually with me in the reading room, where I usually pull related trade catalogs, books, and magazines for them to look at, stuff that we would pull that they can manhandle a little more without having to go through the here's how you delicately touch things, here's how you don't mess up a folder. And so they can have a more free experience to kind of explore their topics that way. All of these students are also allowed to take out books from the research center. They have circulation privileges that are usually only reserved for our staff. So we make sure that they are all also signed up for their library accounts at that point, and if they need any books for their research or projects, that they are getting them at that time. We do some one-off programming as well. They do career day with us once a year, where we try to pull out things that are related to them that might make them want to be librarians and archivists and curators and things like that. We've done projects where students come in to look specifically at Sears catalogs, Montgomery Ward catalogs, wish books from a certain era. Lately, the topics have been around the 1930s, and their teacher at the time will give them a profession and a salary, and they'll have to come up with a full wardrobe and figure out how long they would have to save to do something like that, what kind of groceries they'd be able to buy. And they'll learn a lot about inflation, about just the change in society from that. There's always a student that is amazed that she can't find pants, and she's supposed to be a painter in the 30s. And it's just like, well, women may not have been able to buy pants very easily at that point in time, or they're always impressed that you used to be able to mail order guns or swaths of fabric, or just all of this amazing and strange things you could get from Sears at the time. That's one of my favorite projects with the students, is them actually getting a chance to look back and see what life was like and understand why we are using these things and how they can be useful. And now that they know more about the history of the country, and now they know more about this time, and they understand what a wage used to be. And it's a really, really fun project. You'll notice I've talked primarily about history type classes and things like that right now. The Henry Ford breaks things down into a few different curatorial collecting areas: technology and communication, agriculture and the environment, power and energy, transportation, design and making, domestic life and public life. And these are not necessarily entirely easy to translate from a layman's perspective into all of the educational areas taught at HFA or any school, really. So we've been working harder to make sure that other teachers know that they can come to us. If we have a biology teacher that needs something, we have a lot of things on plants and Washington Carver and agriculture in general. We have a lot of things on environmental science. We can do a lot there. With our power and energy, you can get a lot of math, you can get a lot of science. There's a ton of engineering in our technology, and we know HFA does robotics programs, and maybe one day they'll be interested in seeing our Apple I computer. So as of right now, we see a lot of history classes coming through, and the occasional English class when they're doing a more historic book, that they can kind of see the relationship between our collections and what they're teaching their students. But we don't see a lot of the math teachers, the science teachers, anything like that. And that was going to be one of our 2020 goals. It's of course now pushed back to 21 and 22. But we've been able to keep up relationships and communications with all of our teachers during the pandemic as well. We are a group of librarians and archivists that do not have teenage children. We don't necessarily always know what the trends are, and as much as we think we are super hip, we are very much history nerds. And that's great for working in a history museum, and it's not as great for giving tours and lessons to a bunch of high school students that might not want to be there. So we've been working really hard to try to identify things that are cool and that these students can relate to. And about as soon as we find something that somebody really likes and we can get a few good tours out of it, it is no longer hip. So when we started doing this, Hamilton was still all the rage, and we had been doing research into Hamilton with our curatorial team and our research center staff to figure out how we could kind of cash in on all of that and what we could put up that could be really interesting. So we found these candlesticks owned by Alexander Hamilton. We have letters from Hamilton to Burr. We have letters from Elizabeth Schuyler, stuff like that. And that's the stuff we would put out. And that would get a nice ooh, ah moment. We have a curator that is trying to collect around internet culture and meme culture. So we would bring that up quite a bit. It's kind of tapered off as some of the stuff we've collected is no longer appropriate to show minors. We've collected some things on like Pepe the Frog, and he became a bit of a right-wing symbol, and his creator killed him off and then brought him back with a very lewd magazine. So when we started talking about memes and stuff like that, the things we had, the buttons, the pins and things that were like one-off items you would find on Etsy, they were a little more appropriate. Now we don't want to have students digging through our catalogs and finding restricted items for them. We also have a lot of cultural magazines, which are great, but the Henry Ford Academy is an incredibly diverse population, and our collections are pretty white. It's something we are also always working on, as I think most museums are right now. This is not a problem just unique to the Henry Ford. The diversity issue is very real and across a lot of museums. But we find that we have a lot of like Screen Star and motion picture and things like that we can put out. But they're going to see a lot of Grace Kelly and Marilyn Monroe and Carrie. They're not going to see actors that look like them from the past. So we've pulled out Rolling Stone and Vogue and tried to get more current faces to show them that we are currently collecting as well, that the era that they are living through right now is also history. And then we take note of the things that they do like and the things that they find cool. The picture on the left is of an archives tour where we pulled out some outdated media, so cassettes, vinyls, VHS, some older MP3 players, and that actually got a lot of love from the students. They did recognize some of the things. Some of them were stuff that the 8-track went over everybody's head, but it was a way to connect with them and kind of show a transformation as well. So we're always looking to see, how are we interacting with these students? Are we actually hitting a nerve? Are they enjoying these things? Are we reaching them on some level? And when we fail, we definitely jot down like, okay, we are not pulling these artifacts again unless they're requested by a teacher. This did not, it just didn't sit with anybody. And before I end all of this, I will say that we have also been working to try to expand this program out to other K-12 institutions, trying to get other students into our archives, know that they can use us as a resource and use our digital collections. Everything has, of course, been sidelined by this pandemic, and our education department has really taken a different approach to getting people to utilize our things, and that does not involve getting people on our site handling items. But this has been a fantastic experience. We have really grown a lot with the staff. We have a great relationship with these teachers now. We have a better understanding of how we work with them and what they need from us. And I really look forward to continuing to grow the program with Henry Ford Academy, and hopefully our next partnership is hopefully going to be with the Detroit Community School District. So hopefully in the next few years, we can also expand out to that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute or to ask in the chat.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful.
I should be thanking you. I know I've asked you several different times over the course of the last 3 years about your experience with the Henry Ford Academy, and it's been super helpful to learn about the relationship this institution has had with the school.
Well, I'm happy. I'm getting an echo, unfortunately, but I'm happy to hear that things are going a lot better than they used to, because I think, unfortunately, they never built in the salary for a librarian at Henry Ford Academy, and that is a very necessary thing. And, you know, it's not just unique for them. All schools in Michigan got rid of their media specialists, and they're realizing that that was a huge mistake. But, you know, it's not easily remedied. You know, while I was listening, I forgot all the cool stuff, like Mrs. Firestone's, Edsel Ford's wife, Eleanor Ford. She had beautiful clothing and beautiful shoes, and just walking through all of that, I miss.
It's definitely something we've missed being off site, and it's so much easier to work or relate to the female students because you see designer dresses and you see shoes and all of that. Not that every girl is fashion obsessed, but you usually get at least a few that are like, oh, I want to definitely look at that. Whereas we don't have a car and third floor storage and things like that.
Right, right, exactly.
For the guys much, yeah. Or we have some sporting memorabilia and things too, but finding what they like versus what we think is really cool is the new challenge.
Yeah. I remember when, and I'll stop talking, I'll stop reminiscing, but there was a cool picture that was, I think when they first got her clothing, they did a little tiny display near the vestibule of the Benson Ford, and they had a picture of her, and she was with Edsel in some foreign country, all dressed to the nines, and there was a monkey that was like jumping on her like a dog, like, here I am. And I thought, here she's in these fine garments and this monkey doesn't really care. It was very cool. So anyway, I think, does anybody, a lot of people are saying thank you. I think they found it fascinating. Does anybody else have any questions before I say goodbye to everybody?
I'll say something. Hi, it's Jennifer Gustafsson. I'm from Wayne State, from the library system and the school. And I used to work at the DIA, and I'm currently trying to work on helping literacy rates improve in the city of Detroit. And my feeling is, with this pandemic, it's really a fantastic opportunity for a lot of museums and archives that have primary resources, and much of them already digitized, and now is the time to kind of incorporate them into curricula. So I think what you're doing for sharing this is really wonderful. And yeah, we can continue to try to figure out how to make these connections with the materials and the people. And one of the positive things about this digital world we live in now, especially because of COVID, is there's less importance on being physically there.
Exactly. It's really given us we've always prided ourselves on being a worldwide institution and a national destination, and just at the Henry Ford with the Village and the museum, but the research center has always been kind of a lower, quiet thing. We have definitely made sure to be communicating with all of our teachers during this to see actions. Unfortunately, which I think was very common all around, a lot of our staff was furloughed for about 6 months. We just got everybody back in beginning mid-October. So there was a period at the beginning of the semester where we were getting requests in for stuff that had not been digitized yet, that these teachers had seen on in-person tours, and we just did not have the staff to accommodate those requests at that time. So now we're going back, we're helping with things like that, hopefully for the future. We know that there's an interest in that now. And our education department is working on virtual field trips for students, and all of this great virtual content that was in the pipeline before, but was not the priority it is now. And I think I saw a request for online tours.
Yes.
The chat.
Yes.
We've done some sorts of things like that, to varying degrees of success. If you are interested in something, my email is on the slide. Shoot me an email and I can work with our special access person to see what we can offer. If there's something we can offer, we have definitely done things for donors, but we're going to have to get back into a pace where we can help the general public with things as well. And I would love to help start to spearhead that. So if you've got requests for things like that, send me an email. And nothing will get done in December. I can already tell you everyone's using up their vacation time, but maybe in January.
Okay, I don't think there's any more questions. That was so wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much. I love it when First Thursdays have nothing to do with Ex Libris content.
Thank you for asking me.
Okay. All right, everybody, have a good December, and we'll see you in January. Bye.
Thank you for organizing. It was wonderful.
You're welcome. Bye.